Now, today's Arbor Day, a day to celebrate planting trees.
But you shouldn't just run around planting trees all willy-nilly. I spoke with an expert with some advice. This spring, many homeowners will be taking on improvement projects, and planting a tree is one way to increase property value. But do you really know which type of tree would be best, or how far should you plant from your home or maybe other structures? Before you take on that DIY project, help is here just in time for Arbor Day and the spring growing season. Certified arborist and tree climbing champion Mark Chisholm is joining us. Mark, thanks so much for being with us.
I'm happy to be here, Tina. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Happy Arbor Day. And just in time for Arbor Day, we are getting some tips from you on planting. Like I said, what type of tree? Where should we be planting? You've got the answers.
That's right. That's what we're here to talk about trees. And to be honest with you, the first thing I'm really worried about the most is thinking about what tree you're going to plant where. You know, that's where we start this conversation of is what are you looking to achieve, and will it grow in the environment you want? That's huge, because otherwise the tree gets stressed.
We're stressing out the tree, so we definitely don't want to do that. So what are some steps that you think we should be taking?
Well, I mentioned finding out about what will do good in your zone. The hardiness zone is what we look for, and that just means will it survive where you live? You know, so if you're trying to plant a tree in Arizona that only grows in, say, Washington State, that's not a really good choice. So you got to know that it's going to love where you're putting it. But number two, and one of the most important things for me as an arborist, is making sure it has the space it needs to grow. And what I mean is, don't plant something that's going to be huge right off your doorstep, and then later on it gets to that point, it's really doing well, and you have to make some bad pruning cuts to really cut it harshly or even take it down. You know, that's something we don't like to do.
Well, that makes sense. And so I'm assuming tree care when it comes to urban areas, like a lot of places that we would be here in Tucson, that comes with a whole new set of steps or things that we need to be thinking about.
Well, urban environments are hard on trees because the soil conditions aren't the same as what they're used to in a forest. You know, they don't have the leaf litter dropping down, putting soil nutrients back in there. You're also dealing with a lot of pollutants and such in a lot of urban environments. So we know trees pull the pollutants in, which is great. It's a nice thing that they do. They put out oxygen and such, but it does sometimes cause problems for trees that aren't used to doing in those environments. But what I would say is that the benefits are huge, you know, so it's well worth our time to preserve those trees. And to be honest with you, they find that urban environments with trees have less crime than urban environments without trees. And that's a great reason as well.
Well, I have actually never heard of that stat, but that actually makes sense. Now, if we're not in, you know, an area where we're ready to do any new planting, what about the trees we already have? What about how can we make sure we keep those trees in good shape and like you were talking about preserving?
Obviously, the trees that are already established are valuable, as you can imagine. So a little preventative maintenance goes a long way. And what I'll look for is when I step on a property, I'll look to see how the tree is looking in its growth pattern as it is right now. For example, we look at a tree like this and we look at the leaf color, we look at the size of the leaves, and we try to see how does it look in comparison to other trees of its same species, and it'll give us a good determination. The other thing I'll say is if it's looking bad, we can do soil samples, find out what the tree needs, and then we can also do other things like preventative maintenance. For example, pruning. We can take trees and we can reduce weight so they don't have breakage. We could take out dead, diseased, dying limbs, things like that. And it's not that it's that big of a deal or that big of an expense, but it goes a long way to preserve your trees.
So is there kind of like a cutoff point when we should not be taking care of it ourselves and we should definitely reach out to a professional?
Yeah, two great times to call on a pro is one is when you have to leave the ground. If you're not trained to work at height, don't try it. It's not worth the risk. You know, call on a pro who's trained to work at height with the right protective equipment. Number two is if there's electrical conductors nearby, don't get involved in that situation. It puts you at risk. So a rule of thumb is when anything has to come within 10 foot of that conductor, call a pro.
Those are two great times that we should definitely be calling in someone that's better than we are, knows what they're doing. Is there any place we can go to maybe get some more information and tips, or even just some more information? Because today's Arbor Day, we should just educate ourselves.
It is Arbor Day, and a great time to go to a website called tipsfortrees.com. A great resource, a lot of good information.
Well, Mark, you have been great this morning. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. The Morning Blend will be right back.